Okay, good. So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's SEDS online webinar. We would like to thank, before we get started, the IAS for the sponsorship to run SEDS online, which allows us to provide all of the resources that we do provide free of charge. So remember to check out our website. It has all of the upcoming webinars, events, and even things like virtual field trips, things like that. So make sure and check it out and let us know if you have any questions or concerns regarding that. Today we are really excited to have the group of, well, a smaller group, let's say a subset of the organizers and students that participated in the last IAS summer school. They're going to give us some information about the summer school, how it went, and all of the wonderful places that they were able to visit and some of the great geology that they were able to see. So Fiona, if you want to please share your slides. We will start with Fiona Whitaker, who was one of the organizers.
Yeah, hopefully you can see my slides.
Looking good.
Good. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be able to talk to you today, and along with, as Chelsea said, some of my co-organizers and our wonderful students, tell you a little bit about the 10th International Summer School of Sedimentology, which took place in Bonaire in the Netherlands Antilles. And this is one of our lovely field sites. This was back in May, seems like a long time ago. But before we talk about Bonaire specifically, what I'd like to do is introduce you to the IAS Summer School of Sedimentology more broadly. The IAS have been sponsoring summer schools since 2005. The initial summer schools, many of them were clustered in Europe. In 2014, the summer school went to Beijing, and since then has visited locations a little bit more broadly spread, although still seeing some of the fantastic outcrops that are available in Europe. And in fact, the next summer school, which we'll talk a bit about later on, is in 2025, is in Northwest Wales in the UK. But today we're going to talk to you about our trip to Bonaire, which is this red star you can see just off the northern coast of Venezuela. The idea of the summer schools is to give postgraduates I'll say something more broadly first. Postgraduate research students an opportunity to interact with more established researchers to discuss new and exciting topics in sedimentology. They always go to places with spectacular outcrops, and they are a wonderful. This is the first summer school I've been involved in. I was not. I did my PhD student before this all started, so I couldn't benefit from them. But from my personal experience, it was a wonderful opportunity to get to know a fantastic group of students and to look at some world-class exposures together with those students and get some new insights. We've been working in Bonaire as a team for the last 10 years or so, but to see things with new eyes and in the company of students with all sorts of experiences, then that was fantastic. So why did we go to Bonaire? What is special about Bonaire? Bonaire is a small, isolated carbonate platform. It contains world-class exposure of Neogene rocks. The rocks were deposited during active uplift. So we've got some spectacular exposures of rocks that were formed below sea level that have been uplifted, but they're relatively young. They've been subject to diagenesis in a semi-arid climate, and they've been partially dolomitized. And indeed, Bonaire was where the original idea of reflux dolomitization was developed. And not only do we have those spectacular outcrops, but we also have modern sediments and diagenetic environments that we can look at to help us to interpret these exposures. Sorry, I think there's a lag in my system when I'm trying to change the slides, which is not very helpful. Great. There we go. So, as we said, Bonaire is on the just offshore of Venezuela, off the northern coast of Venezuela. It's one of a series of isolated platforms that have been uplifted and are still being uplifted. And what you can see on the right-hand side is a geological map of Bonaire. And many of these outcrop locations are locations that some of our students who are on the trip are going to talk to you about later in the seminar. The leaders of the trip have been working, as I say, in Bonaire for the last decade or so. Our inspiration and grand leaders, Juan Carlos Laya from Texas A&M. And along with Juan Carlos, we also got Cameron Manche from Texas A&M, myself and Carl Jacomin from Imperial College London. In addition, special mention to the lovely Tatiana Gabalone, who sadly was unable to come with us in the field. She has twins and has her hands more than full, but was super helpful in terms of organising the field trip and really played a key role all the way through. And then what really made the trip special were our students. We had 23 student members from 17 different countries, as you can see, distributed across many of the continents. We did have a student from Africa who sadly was unable to join us, but is here today in the seminar. And really, what the aim of this seminar is to let some of the students talk to you about their field experiences. So we have 3 students who are going to talk to you. We have Drew Brown, Guido Alonso, and Teresa Mosakiova. I hope I said that right, Teresa. I always just call you Teresa. Anyway, so I'm going to hand over to them. You don't want to sit and listen to me. You want to listen to the students. They're much more exciting than I am. So I'm going to hand over at that point, but I will hang around and more than happy to contribute to answering questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Super. So Drew, you can pop your slides up when Fiona has hers down. And I will mention to the audience as our typical webinars go, you will have time to input any of your questions that you have into the chat towards the end of the seminar. So Stephen will open up the chat and you'll get a message when it's time to do that. And then I will be reading them out.
Sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Drew. I'm currently at the University of Manchester, but as Fiona was saying, I'm here to talk a little bit about my experience and some technical aspects of our summer school in Bonaire. So what I want to personally talk about was our first 2 days on the island. And this largely was focused around collecting observations of both modern reefs as well as a lagoon environment. And kind of as Fiona stated, our goal was to collect a lot of modern observations and then compare those to some of the outcrops that we got to see around the island. So just to start with our first day on the smaller island of Bonaire, you can see highlighted in the red box there, just about 1 kilometer to the west of the main island of Bonaire. And just a bit of background about this little island is it's about 6 kilometers squared or so. You see 2 lagoons on the west and the southern portions of it. But it also has a fringing reef that borders the island itself. And then a deeper reef that occurs on the slope margin that defines this platform margin of the island of Bonaire itself. So in going to Bonaire, we had a couple of goals that initially started in the classroom where we wanted to use satellite imagery to kind of get an estimate of both reef and sediment facies belts so that we could compare them when we actually arrive at the island. Mainly, kind of to observe the architecture of these modern reefs from the fringing to the slope. So in the beginning of the day, we started in the classroom looking at both satellite images and some hyperspectral images here from Muker et al. And in groups, we got to work together and kind of make estimates of, okay, where might we expect to see carbonate sands as opposed to living corals or dead corals, and how do we expect to see some of these sediment factories and their characteristics in a more or less higher energy system, all within the framework of changes in relative sea level rise that are occurring right now. So you'll see there's a red box on the Google Earth image at the top here. Those were our 2 stops, and we got to do a swimming transit where we started at the right stop 1.2, and swim over to the left. So here you see us actually walking up the beach to begin collecting some of our observations. So drawing your attention to the photo on the left, you'll notice that there are plentiful corals washed up on the beach alongside a lot of carbonate sand. And our observations of the carbonate sand indicated that it was mostly composed of coral fragments, smaller than the big chunks you see here, but also some red algae, foraminifera, and peloids, so making up the finer bits. But alongside that, you'll see on the right side extensive coral rubble. This is mainly Acropora species of coral, washed up on the beach itself, and even cemented in that bottom image. So some evidence of early cementation through early marine diagenesis. Moving then into the fringing reef. Again, you'll notice in that right image and on the left as well that there extensive coral rubble on the seabed here, and this is about maybe a meter deep of water. But alongside that, some living corals, but notably stressed living corals. A lack of vibrancy, some bleaching maybe going on. And when we compare this to the deeper environment, about 10 to 15 meters of water on the platform margin and on the slope, we noticed some key differences. So just to kind of explain this photo, where the red arrows point would be pointing down the slope or off the platform margin, and the backside of that would be the edge of this platform. So that profile is really highlighted in that bottom right image. And what stuck out to us was how steep that profile really is. But just comparing this to the shallow fringing reef, we noticed, again, extensive coral rubble on the edge here, but an abundance of living corals. So sea fans like Gorgonia, a lot of brain corals, Acropora, and Orbicella. But with this observation, noting that there was more or less a low diversity of coral species, but a high abundance of them in this area, which we found kind of interesting. In comparing this environment to the shallow fringing reef area, we see that there was much more stressed dying corals in that 1 meter of water, as opposed to a concentration of living, more healthy, thriving corals in the 10-meter depth. And after some discussion, we kind of came to the conclusions that this was probably due to, an optimal sunlight and energy setting for these corals at that platform edge, where they're not getting stressed by, high heats in an arid climate in that shallow area. A bit of discussion about the sediments, how they may transport and accumulate here. On the left, we had some observations of channels that actually ran down the platform margin on that steep slope, where eroded sediments and the coarser material, like the coral rubble, would actually fall down these channels. So you can see that red arrow kind of highlighting one of these channels down the slope. Additionally, sediments were being baffled by the reef, so accumulating locally. You can kind of see that here. But also just from our discussion and literature, we knew that there were some high energy currents that pass between Klein Bonaire and the main island that displace some of these sediments to huge depths, 200 to 500 meters. So moving on from Klein Bonaire into the Lac Bay Lagoon. This was an intertidal back barrier lagoon. So you see in the Google Earth image on the right, we have a barrier reef that extends from the south of the lagoon up to the north, and followed by a larger tidal channel. This barrier reef closes the lagoon from open ocean conditions. And additionally, you see a lot of green vegetation in the back of the lagoon. This would be a mangrove forest. So our first stop in Lac Bay was actually to walk this red line, the half-a-kilometer line, in the restricted area from more or less a upper intertidal, to the open reef. Again, our goals in going here were more or less to look at the sediment factories and the characteristics, but this time comparing a high to low energy setting, that barrier reef being at the front of wave action, and then the back of the lagoon being more restricted. This time we wanted to observe the sediments and a lot of the seagrasses within the framework of early marine diagenesis. So moving from the left to the right, the left being a high energy or seaward barrier reef into the more landward lagoon, low energy restricted. Like I said, we're at the front of wave action here. So in the top two photos, you can actually see quite big waves. It might be hard to tell here, but large waves crashing into this barrier reef and swashing up mainly acropora rubble on this kind of spit here. And you can see some of those coral chunks underwater here with some lionfish tucked in them, which was pretty cool. As we get more into the middle intertidal, this was actually adjacent to a tidal channel that came in from the barrier reef. We saw extensive seagrass beds, so mainly of thalassia or turtle grass. That's kind of these longer brown pieces, but additionally green algae species like Penicillus and Halimeda. That extended for pretty much the entire transect, half a kilometer or more in these sand beds. Another super cool thing that we got to see were these rhodoliths, which are typically unattached red calcareous nodules. So we got to actually see those on the seafloor. And then moving into our more restricted, the landward area, kind of what's to be expected of a restricted lagoon. We see things like an algal mat, burrowing, and finer carbonate sand. You'll notice some red in the carbonate sand, and that was what we thought was red algae that we saw quite abundantly, as well as some foraminifera. And you can see some smaller coral fragments and peloids probably produced by burrowers like crabs and worms in this area. So just to switch then to the mangrove forest where we got to do some kayaking. We were back in the back channel areas, tidal channels. And you see the group there on their kayaks and Carl's hand actually holding a sample of the typical sediment from these tidal channel areas in the mangrove forest. And you'll actually notice quite a bit of Halimeda grains in between a colloidal, matrix more or less, with some shells in there as well. Great photo here from one of the students, Tom Gardner. Got something that we all noticed was abundant oysters growing on these mangrove roosts in the tidal channels. And we thought this was just the coolest thing. And this is a great depiction of how concentrated they were throughout the entire channel. But among the sediments and the oysters, we also saw, again, extensive seagrass beds, lots of burrowing here. This is quite a large burrow made by a worm that made a mound. It's a bit hard to tell, but also tons of schooling fish that were going back and forth from the open lagoon to these more restricted areas. So just to talk a bit about some of the science that we got to do in this area, one of the cooler things was collecting both pore water and seawaters to measure things like salinity and pH. And so in this top right photo, you can see Carl actually taking some pore water samples from a syringe out of sediments that were close to our lagoon. But in the big image here, you see measurements 1 through 6. These were all surface water measurements taken by Tom Kibblewhite. And we essentially moved from a more restricted area in the tidal channels to the open lagoon. And maybe for those that aren't as familiar with conductivity, we can kind of use that as a basis for salinity. So a higher conductivity would equate to higher salinity. And what you'll notice is that we move from measurement 1 being the most restricted area to the open lagoon, our salinity decreases. And this is probably to be somewhat expected considering, it's a hot area. Maybe these more restricted waters are subject to evaporation, thereby, concentrating the solutes a bit. But our pH also probably to be expected becomes more and more like seawater, 8 being, the pH of seawater more or less. So seawaters come in through this tidal channel and move their way into the back areas here. And as we move from a restricted setting to the open lagoon, our pH becomes more like seawater. Temperature more or less staying the same, so not too much home to write about there. But just to talk briefly about my experience with this, the geology and the things we learned were absolutely phenomenal, but it was more than that. We got to see culturally significant things, like ancient drawings and slave huts, beautiful views and great time spent with people. But this is a tip to the leaders, but there was never any necessarily answers given. It was a lot of personal interpretations and encouragement to discuss among the group. And our group was just fantastic, and we're keen to ask questions and to learn. And it really, at the end of the day, after a long day in the field, we all got to sit around at dinner, have a drink, and not only get to talk about cool geology, but also get to know each other. And I know that if I'm at a conference one day or visiting a country, I can call up anyone that was in this group, and I think we'd be happy to meet. So that's all I got. I'll pass it on to Guido to talk a little bit more, but thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Guido, we will have you share your slides next.
Okay.
While you pull those up, I will mention, I know that the group from the previous summer school in Spain also got to have sort of a really nice meetup at the last IAS meeting. So maybe if there are any of you guys that all go to the IAS meeting this coming year, then you guys can have that same opportunity.
Shall I start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Guido Ezequiel Alonso. I am an Argentinian geologist, currently making my PhD in geology sciences at Universidade Federal do Paraná in Brazil. I'm working in continental carbonates, particularly travertines from the Central Andes region in Argentina. For me, participating in the 10th IAS summer school was so much important to develop my knowledge about marine carbonate deposition processes, allowing me to make further comparisons in continental systems. In this presentation, I will talk about some of the activities we conducted during the IAS field school in May. Well, the course included different daily activities, such as group work with morning lectures and field observation, profile descriptions, and individual presentations of each of us at night. Was really nice, that thing. And of course, outcrop description. What I'm going to talk is about a description of carbonate deposits, their genesis and dolomitization, together with control on sea level changes, tectonics, and climate. Well, our work and description began in the region of Andreas at the western side of the island here from the desert. These outcrops are located at the roadside, exposing these sections. They are the youngest Pleistocene carbonate platform outcrops that we described in our field trip. Here you can see barely some corals that are exposed in this outcrop. We spent the morning making a description of the outcrop. Here is a sketch that I made of the place. And from base to top is broadly composed by consolidated yellowish radstone with large coral fragments. Here I made some sketch, and you can see here the pictures. The corals were sometimes rotated and sometimes in light position. And also, the sedimentation followed with gastropod shells, fragmented shells, sedimentary bivalves, and abundant mold of aragonitic precursors. To the top of the section, we were able to see some fossil traces, and as well as molded porosity of aragonitic allochens that have been dissolved out, and perhaps paleosalts. Here is a little sketch that I made of the description of the outcrop. So, continue with the Pleistocene deposit. We also visited the outcrop located in Boca Chiquito, the north side of the island. This really nice outcrop was studied by Laja et al. In 2018. Here is the publication. And they dated the corals here in 125,000 years old. The coral species was the Monastria. This one's big one here, over here. And they utilized the uranium thorium technique in aragonite crystals. And this age that was dated was coincident with the MI5E, the last interglacial period before the Holocene. Here we have the datation. We can see that it's a warmer temperatures. And here are the red sea levels that were measured by Ronald Al 2009 to compare with the, here is the present sea level. So during the match of the Pleistocene, the sea level was substantially lower than at present. Carbonates would have experienced long period of exposure to meteoric diagenesis. But here we can see that the sea level was higher. We continue to description of Pleistocene terraces, and we go to the place called Tolo. In this place was a really nice place located not so far from Andreas. In this location, both Pleistocene deposits can be found, as well as a really nice tourist trail that allow for easy appreciation of the outcrops. Featuring also local fauna, such as this charming iguana, who seems that likes to pose in very aesthetic ways. Picture from Ariel Martins. Well, at first glance, we can see that these images have significant development of caves due to karsting and meteoric diagenesis. The deposit also contains various types of corals. We can see here some molded porosity and corals. Adjacent to this site, well-developed horizontal notches are evident between the cliffs. We can see the erosion of they're caused by erosion of the sea level, erosion by at the sea level, and they're locally alerted to form caves, with some of which contain spilettines. Here we can see some spilettines like stalactites and stalagmites. Internally, it's important to note that internally, where the corals used to be present, we have the cavities developed more extensively due to preferential dissolution of aragonite. Aragonite dissolves more than calcite, and we have a lot of molds here. And where it used to be big corals, you have that the cavities were even bigger over there. Really nice to watch. So going in the description about the notch. Coastal notch is an erosional feature that cut off into local coastal cliff of the Pleistocene terraces. Here we have a modern notch that is caused by the action of tide and waves. So measuring the depth and height of the notch is a way to identify the level of the tides and the wave dynamics. Other notches revealed tectonic uplift of the island. This older notches was located 7 to 8 meters above the sea level, the current sea level. Here we can see our group making description of the notes. This work for Lorsedal works extensively in that notch description. Well, after that description, in the adjacent area near Tolo, we can make an observation of the 4 different terraces that were preserved. The absolute elevation evidencing an uplift of the tectonic uplift of the around the island, and the rates are not the same everywhere. The terraces developed as an interplay between tectonic uplift and estuary and erosion. So the structure here, all the 4 terraces have a notch at the base, and the terrace and the next terrace at the top. Here are the datation of the terrace, of the different terraces. Remember, this one was dated in the place called Boca Chiquito that we saw some slides ago. Well, continue to the deposit that we see. We continue our travel to Cerro Grande outcrop in the Washington Slagway National Park. Here we can see this really spectacular view of the outcrops, and we can see the upper Miocene carbonates deposited in a series of progradational clinoforms with an upper eroded by a flat-lying Pleistocene riffle platform. As we see here, we have the flat platform and the progradational platform. So what we did here is look at the distribution of clastic components in the layers, make description, measuring the clinoforms also, and we continue our description, and we we can see that here the clinophores prograde and deposit from right to the left. And mineralogical analysis and composition help to reconstruct the evolution of the clinoforms and reflux dolomitization within them. The work of Lajet al. showed that they have dolomitization and the upper part of this of the clinoforms A and C particularly. Going back in time, we continue with the Miocene deposits. The Miocene deposits are made by the xeroidomi formation, and we, after a hike along the side of Bonaire, is a really nice place, we could see just not only carbonates, but also fragmentary volcanic clastic material that works together with the carbonates. The Miocene deposits is description was of this outcrop, a really, really nice outcrop. We made a description. As here we can see some volcanic clastics that are almost like 10 centimeters. The beds are deep approximately 30 degrees toward the south, tilting during uplift of 4 reef slope depositions. They are lenticularly poorly sorted bed with yellow and brown color, composed by calcitic and dolomitic material. You have to remember they have some dolomitic material and some highly fragmented bivalves and corals. Here is a sketch that I made of the outcrop. It is estimated that only 20% of the rock underwent dolomitization, which occurred prior to tectonic uplift that may have tilted these deposits. Or perhaps they were deposited in a sloping volcanic basement. This is in discussion. Well, continue with the concluding description of the other really key point, which is dolomitization. Which other place better to start dolomitization than Peckelmer? Peckelmer is the place where the reflux model the dolomitization was proposed by the Fayez et al. In 1964. Peckelmer is an hypersaline lagoon in the southwestern of the island. Here we can see the location, southwestern of the island, and it's currently exploded for salt production, a topic that will be brought by Teresa in the next presentation. This place is important because it's an analog. It's a place for analog for study reflux dolomitization. Well, here we have the hypersaline man-made pools for salt production, the sea, and the Peckelmer. And and they are separated from the sea by a permeable beach barrier. Accumulation of fine carbonate sediment and sequential precipitation of marine evaporites are in this site and are used for salt production. I'm going to talk about the 2 models for dolomitization that have been proposed in this area. First, the reflux model. The reflux model. It is about the density contrast between the lagoon, the brines in the lagoon, and the Sorodi Sea, causing a flow seaward of high magnesium calcium and causing alteration of dolomite, of calcite to dolomite. Remember that alteration of calcite to dolomite follows this order. It's calcite, magnesium calcite, disordered dolomite, and stoichiometric dolomites. And the alternatively model has been suggested that evaporation lowers the water level in the lagoon, and this head of difference of drawn seawater into the lagoon, which causes dolomitization. Another thing important here is to talk about the biogeochemical influence of microbial influence that could be causing also precipitation of dolomite or transformation to calcite dolomite. And well, thank you for your attention. Lastly, I would like to mention one non-academic highlight at the start of the trip, the professional student participation with the ONG Mangrove Maniacs, a volunteer activity, planting mangroves on the island in appreciation for the place. Was a really, really nice activity. I really enjoyed that time. And well, thank you very much for your attention. And now I will pass the presentation to Teresa.
Great, thanks, Guido. Teresa, if you have your slides coming up.
Right, can you see my slides and can you hear me?
Looks great. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Mosochua, as Fiona pronounced very well, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Oslo. And this is the third and last presentation from the student participants of the IAS field school. I will wrap up this little online excursion to the geology of Bonaire with my topic targeting the evaporites, ionites, and karsts on Bonaire we visited during the IAS summer school. So as we've already heard from the previous talks, the geology of Bonaire Island consists of Neogene to modern carbonates, but this is not the only topics we covered during the summer school. This presentation will be about karstification processes on Bonaire, but also it will cover ionites and evaporites. Karstification occurs on most older carbonate deposits, shown in yellow and mustard colors on this map and the cross section. The ionites, they are located in the central part of Bonaire, and they also form the uppermost hill of the island, as you can see on the cross section. And the evaporites, they precipitate mainly in the southern part of Bonaire in the Pecalmeal Lagoon, as we heard from Guido in the previous presentation. They are shown in purple on this geological map. A bit about the climate of Bonaire. So Bonaire is part of the Dutch Caribbean. It is located about 12 degrees north, and it's close to Aruba and Curacao Islands and north of Venezuela. And as we can already expect from its position, there is mostly semi-arid environment with a mean annual temperature of pleasant 28 degrees Celsius and quite low degree of precipitation. The trade winds on Bonaire are more or less constant with a wind speed of about 7 meters per second. Here you can see two pictures taken by Tom, one of the course participants, showing that even in these harsh conditions, there are still some plants, still some vegetation, some cacti growing, and usually they are very spiky. But fortunately, the outcrops are still showing some excellent exposures, and they can be reached by foot or even some of them by car. We've already heard a bit about the Pecalmeal Lagoon in the previous presentation, but now I will focus on the evaporite precipitation. So these climatic conditions are perfect for evaporite precipitation. And on the southern tip of the island, there is a broad flat area with very shallow water, mainly of less than 1 meter, which is called the Pecalmeal Lagoon. And this lagoon is not directly connected to the open ocean. There is a narrow ridge between the lagoon and the ocean. This ridge is mainly made of coral rubble, which accumulated due to the wave action, but also some aeolian deposits. And as we've learned on the previous slide, the mean annual rainfall is quite low, and the annual evaporation in this area actually exceeds it 5 times. And therefore, in the Pecalmeal Lagoon, evaporites precipitate out of the brine in the lagoon. And the evaporites were of the main interest in the history of Bonaire. The island was first inhabited by people from a tribe who came from Venezuela. It was rediscovered by Spanish explorers in the 15th century and used for salt production and cattle plantation from the 16th century on. And in the 17th century, it became a colony of the Netherlands, and the salt production business kept growing. Even today, the Pecalmeal Lagoon is used for salt production and for export to several countries. The Pecalmeal Lagoon formed as a depression on the Pleistocene deposits. In 1968, there was a shallow borehole drilled through the sediment fill on the lagoon, and that's how we know about its development and stratigraphy. On top of the Pleistocene bedrock, there is a layer of Halimeda grainstone deposited in open marine conditions. And then the relative sea level fall caused restriction of Pecalmere and deposition of lithoclastic sediments with aragonetic cement and thin clay beds. The deposits are interfingerated with several volcanic ash layers. The overlying layer of the lithoclastic sediment is made of intertidal pelleted lime mud with algae mud and restricted fauna. On top of that, there is a thick layer of laminated gypsum. And in today's stage of the lagoon, there is salt precipitating in regulated conditions by the industry company running the salt production. As part of our exercise, we collected a dataset at the Pecalmere Lagoon and its surroundings. And we measured conductivity, temperature of the water, and also pH. Most of these measurements were done by Tom Kibblewhite and by students under his supervision. Overall, we have data from 5 seawater stations, then also 7 mangrove lagoons, and these lagoons are located at the Rubble Ridge, and also 5 localities within the Pecalmere Lagoon itself. And here you can see our data collection plotted on the satellite images. Evaporite mineral precipitation is dependent on the chemistry of the brine in the lagoon. And in normal seawater conditions, there are mainly carbonates forming, but with the increasing concentration, there are evaporite minerals forming as well. And at first, it is calcium sulfate, like gypsum or anhydrite that form from brine, which is about 4 times of seawater concentration. But with increasing concentration, there is halite forming with concentration of up to 10 times of seawater concentration. And after exceeding this concentration, there are potassium salts like cornellite or polyhalite forming when the concentration exceeds 10 times seawater concentration. And how does this system work from the hydrological point of view? Evaporation within a restricted lagoon leads to reduction of the water level, as Guido suggested in the previous presentation. And this may drive flow of seawater into the lagoon through the beach barrier, but also the dense brine may contrarily return to the ocean. And the brine chemistry can also be influenced by discharge of groundwater linked to karst conduits. And talking about karst conduits, this brings us to the next topic, which is the karst development on Bonaire. Karstification of recently deposited carbonates goes quite fast due to several factors. The first factor is that aragonite is only metastable and has a relatively high porosity, and therefore it is quite easy to dissolve or erode it. Moreover, the climatic conditions of Bonaire enhance the dissolution and erosion. The main driving forces influencing the karst development are hydrological and chemical processes, but also sea level variations. On the upper picture, there is a sinkhole we visited on Klein Bonaire, and the lower picture shows our group in one of these beautiful cave systems. Here are some of the karst features we could see during the field trip, mainly some stalagmites and stalactites, also collapsed ceiling structures, several flow stones and columns, and even some rimstone dams. My last topic, that's the aeolianites. These aeolian deposits in Bonaire form an up to 40 meters thick cap on the progradational platform deposits, and they consist of a high-angle cross-stratified grainstone. The particles were transported from the coastal parts of Bonaire by the easterly trade winds. These winds are typically of constant wind speed of 7 meters per second. And we visited this outcrop on our last day, and we could see again all the places we visited during the whole summer school, and it was also an amazing viewpoint, so it was a very nice recapitulation of the topic. Overall, the summer school gave me an opportunity to explore amazing places, offering a very interesting modern environment, but also Neogene outcrops. And for me personally, it was a great opportunity to visit an area which corresponds to the depositional environment of my research. I had an opportunity to meet fellow master and PhD students from all over the world, and start building my own network. And also the summer school instructors created a great program covering many different topics. So everyone had a chance to improve their understanding of their main topic, but also learned about new things. This summer school was a really nice hands-on experience, and definitely a milestone in my PhD and also in my scientific career. So thanks to everyone who organized or participated in the trip, and of course thanks to IAS for their support. Yeah, that was my presentation.
Thank you, Teresa. We will have Juan Carlos on to sort of close out this presentation. So stick around, everybody online, and we will also give you some information on the upcoming summer school.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you very much for attending here, and I think I want to just close out with a series of acknowledgement of people who actually make this happen, and and the experience in general to see. But you saw all the technical part we visited was very intense 7 days that all the students were really engaged. We were from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the evening, just discussing and having all this science and personal experiences, sharing with all of those. Okay, that's one of in that slide you see is one of the views from our hotel. I just want to say about the place. Bonaire I've been working there for about 10 to maybe 12 years since the group like Fiona was saying, and it's just an incredible place, just from blue waters to pink lagoons to exotic fauna. You can see, but also incredible rocks. There's all the advantage that we have a very a small place that we can see many things, including you see the modern sediments occurring like the reef and the shallow lagoon sediments like the rhodolites. You can go and see in the Miocene rocks actually there too. That was very rewarding in seeing all of these. Also, but I have to confess, it was very eye-opening. This all new ideas with this bunch of students challenges our interpretations. That's actually very enriched experience. The team, I will say everybody in this front of the leaders, from Fiona, Carl, Cameron, Tati, that sadly she couldn't go, but we have to do a special thanks to Brian Coffey. Brian was one of the help that we couldn't done many of the stops in some of the places that without his help. He really refined all the ideas that we have. He is a very experienced geologist. He decides to move to the island lucky for the people in the island that have this a great experience in geology there. Okay, and also the IAS team, Jim and Chelsea, just always willing to help, moving into the process of registration, the process of applications, and going to until the final products that you guys are seeing. Okay. Also in Bonaire, we have this amazing group of people from the park rangers. Estinapa is the institute that actually manage all the national parks, all the areas we just visited. Basically, Bonaire is probably 80% national park. And then especially Karen Eric, she was one of the great help in there, just organizing everything, like making sure that we were moving through with with all the logistics that we needed. Okay, also the packed ranges and all those people are really, really valuable in this experience. But I want to just stop here for one of my, I want to say this is my personal experience. I was fortunate to participate as a student in the third IAS summer school in Almeria in Spain. You see here is a picture of me with I think Peter Holted from Dublin. He was in Tabernas Basin, and 15 years later I was here to being a leader. And there's really, from networking, this was tremendous inspiration for my career. From networking, science, collaboration, and also my personal connection. Even Tatiana Gavellone was one of the organizers. We actually done a lot of work in the island. She was there too. There was, imagine these connections and lifelong networking. It will last for many, many years. Okay, and of course, the main thing here is the group. All these amazing students from all over the world, like really fresh ideas, very energetic, and really have a lot of fun, and we learned a lot. Okay, this is all some of the pictures. So there are hundreds and hundreds of pictures of our group in doing many, many things. Right, we have to thank IAS, but the students, colleagues, and everybody who make this happen. Sincerely, I hope this program will continue for many, many years, right? And with these things, we're just gonna open it for the next summer school that will be in Northwest Wales, for next year. There is some information in the IAS webpage and some more detailed information here that you can see. Maybe Steve wants to step up and maybe talk a little bit about this too. Okay. Well, this is just thank you.
Thanks very much, John Carlos. Can you just go back one slide to that? No, the other one, the detailed one. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. So next year, before we go to questions, next year we have the 11th IAS Summer School. And IAS Summer Schools used to be run every 2 years, and we are going back to that 2-year period. So we've had a few to catch up for COVID, because we all missed a few summer schools then, but we're going back to a 2-year cycle. So next year, the 11th IAS International Summer School is stepping up down in temperature. We're not going to be in the Caribbean for the first time in a few years. We're going to be in North Wales, but we're stepping up in scale. We're covering 800 million years of Earth history in 800 kilometers square. North Wales has got a beautiful range of geological features, beautiful range of past environments. We're going to be seeing shallow marine, we're going to be seeing deep marine, we're going to be seeing hydrothermal vents, we're going to be seeing glacial landscapes, we're going to be seeing fluvial systems, down right from fluvial source to sink, right down to deltaic systems. So a massive range of environments. We are delighted to say that we've managed to keep the costs down. We've negotiated with the IAS and we've kept the costs down to €300 registration. So that's all your food, all your accommodation for the week. And of course, as usual, as an IAS student member, you can apply for an IAS travel grant, which will also cover a lot of your other expenses. This field is being this field work is, or summer school is being masterminded by the amazing Jaco Bass. We have the fabulous Megan Baker from Durham joining us. Di Hughes, also from Bangor University, will be there, and my humble self, I will be joining you to cover all the carbonates that we'll be seeing. Yes, we're going to see some fabulous carbonates in North Wales too. So thank you very much. I'll hand back to you guys. Thank you.
Super. So if I can have all of the presenters from the summer school, please turn your videos on. We can take any questions now from the audience. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we will get them out to whoever they might pertain to. We will start with Joanna's question. She wants to know if participating in the IAS summer school requires any special preparation from the participants. And she is joining us from Golden, Colorado.
I'm happy to answer that one. We did set some tasks for students to undertake, and there were two purposes for setting those tasks. What we asked students to do was to do some prior research relating to one of the field days. So a group of, I think the groups were normally 4, maybe 5 students, would get together before we went in the field. They would do some background reading, and then they'd give us a short presentation in the morning before we went in the field. And there were two purposes for that. First of all, to give them a more intimate prior knowledge of a site, and to practice describing those sites. But just as important, I think it gave students, when they first arrived on the field trip, a group of people who they knew already. So they recognized faces, they've been working with people. And I'd really love to hear from the students whether they thought that was helpful, whether they'd have appreciated more or less things to do, because this is also a learning experience for IAS and for all the future organizers of field trips. So each year we try, or each time there's a field summer school, we try and do things we learn from the previous summer schools, and we try and maybe inject a little something different. So I'd love to hear back from some of our students, whether there are 3 presenters, but I recognize quite a lot of names in the audience as well. So over to you, students.
Yes. So just to clarify, so you guys had your groups do work prior to even traveling to Bonaire. And then they would give a presentation before. Okay, super.
They were given a topic to prepare, and then on the morning of the relevant field day, they'd give us a description, so everyone knew a little bit about what to look forward to seeing. It was much better than listening to the old fogies talking every morning. So.
Super, I love that idea. How did you guys feel about it? Do any of you 3 students want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it was really helpful. Like it wasn't like too much to ask. I think it was a good preparation and like to get in the mindset before you go there. And then it also like allowed us to get together upon arriving with our group that we didn't know some of these people, and we got to discuss amongst each other and like have a meeting and kind of get ourselves oriented. And I think it also helped that like when we were in the field, we could be of another resource besides the leaders to other students. So, you know, the people who didn't have to study that particular thing could come to us and say, hey, you know, you have a little bit of background, maybe you could help me out. But I found it was definitely very beneficial, and it wasn't like an overruling task by any means. It was just good to get you know, some background on it.
A little familiar with the subject, yeah. And Teresa, you unmuted. Did you want to comment as well?
Yes, I wanted to say it was actually not the only thing we had to prepare. We also had to prepare a little presentation about our own topics of our research in Pechakucha style. And I think it was brilliant to hear what other people do their research on, and kind of spend our evenings just talking about the topics we're interested in. So I think that was brilliant.
That's great. Yeah, that can also help provide sort of a little bit of information on each student, and maybe somebody else has insight for that type of project. So yeah, great. Thank you for that feedback. Stephen wants to know if each of you students could give one piece of advice to future participants?
Well, first of all, as a non-native not-native English speaker, if you are not if you are not native English, to be well prepared in English, because it will help a lot to your communication, to have fluid dialogues, to enjoy also, and to learn much more, and to catch a lot more about the information of the place, and also to hang more with your partners. Well, it's always, for me, I think it's always important to read a little about the place you are going to visit, to study a little before to go there, in order to the information go better. In order that you can manipulate the information in a better way, to understand the classes and the teachers and all that.
Super. Drew, do you want to go next? One piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say like come into it with like this desire to learn, like, and I think many people will, but like what I found, I kind of mentioned in my talk, like we all got to we were encouraged to try to make interpretations ourselves and try to deduce from the environment. So like coming in with that desire amongst your peers not only makes you a better learner, but it helps the morale of the group. You know, if we have a full group that's wanting to ask questions, then I think that makes everyone's experience a lot better and better for it.
I saw a lot of clicking when we get there. The people were like looking at the fields and area when they went there. They really clicked in some of the. I have the very interesting, a real curiosity about the sites and the specific topics. I found it really helpful.
That's great. Yeah. Teresa.
Yeah, my advice would be work hard on your application for the next summer school because you want to get in.
That is great advice. And I think that Stephen actually put that link in the chat for more information on the IAS website. So for all of you graduate students out there in the audience, or anybody watching afterwards on the YouTube channel, yeah, put the effort in and you can come out with this really rewarding experience. We're going to take one more question from Mubriz, and he is coming to us from Greece. Such a nice and interesting webinar. I'm an MSc student of applied paleontology with a specialized focus on micropaleontology, carbonate facies, and paleoclimate studies. I'm preparing my application for the 2025 summer school, but my thesis topic has not been decided yet. It will surely be related to paleooceanography and paleoenvironment reconstructions and will be finalized in December 2024. I just want to ask, would my application be considerable? Oh, okay. So that's, maybe I can field that question. So actually your thesis topics and your dissertation topics they don't need to sit right in the range that you're going to be studying in the summer school. So the summer school, as Fiona sort of mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, it has a lot of application, right? Not necessarily just to get more information on your specific thesis topic, right? It's networking, it's learning about different topics, actually. It's gaining new perspectives, right? So there's a lot more that goes into it versus just seeing if you fit in that niche. And I don't know if anybody else wants to make a comment on that. Fiona? Oh, I can't hear you, Fiona. There you go.
Okay,
Yep.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just looking back at our selection procedure, and I thought that might be quite interesting to share with future students. And we had 3 criteria. We had obviously more applicants than we had places, and it was lovely to have such a broad range of applicants. We looked at the extent to which, I mean, the IAS say this is a summer school that is preferentially or ideally suited to PhD students, but we also considered master's students. If you were towards the end of your PhD, you obviously wouldn't have another chance to apply for an IAS summer school. So we gave preference to the people who were further through their PhD. We also looked at the research subject, but that was only one of, you know, was the broad area in which you're working something that you'd benefit from going to this particular field school. But You get so much more, as Chelsea said, from going to the summer school than learning about your particular subject. You're already probably a bit of an expert on the tiny little bit of science that's your PhD. What you can get out of this field school is the experience of so much more, as well as the opportunity to talk to people. And really important criteria, we also looked at your motivation statement and the support letters from your supervisors. So I would encourage you to really think carefully about your motivation statement and talk to your supervisors and say, look, this is the reason I want to go. This is the reason I think this is important, and encourage them to support you as well.
Juan Carlos, you unmuted. Did you want to mention?
No. I just said that I just follow with Fiona. We did look at these criteria, and but it's very important the motivations, why you want to do the summer school. But, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to participating in summer school. As I say, for my personal experience, I can talk to that. I went to one, and it was really changing my career. It's very impactful in my career. Yeah. I mean, I encourage you to do it. If you as much try hard to get in, because it's worth it.
Yes. And even if you aren't super far along in your graduate degree, you know, and you're interested in the summer school, I would say apply, because you never know, right? Maybe you get in this time, or maybe you get in the next time. But regardless sort of the focus, I think that there's so many benefits for you in your graduate studies and also your career, as Juan Carlos mentioned. So we are going to cut it off there. If anybody has any follow-up questions, I'm assuming that they can probably contact any of our presenters today. You're also welcome to contact myself or the General Secretary, or the anybody that you find on the IAS website. I'm sure, you know, they can direct you to the correct person. But I'm happy to field any questions for anybody interested in either joining a summer school or hosting a summer school, right? We also need fabulous hosts. So thank you again. Huge round of applause for the organizers. Students might not realize, but it's a massive undertaking actually to provide a summer school. So we are so grateful. The IAS is so grateful also for all of the people who are willing to host a summer school and put one on, and happy that it can, you know, benefit all of the wonderful students that participate. So thank you again, and congratulations on the very successful summer school in Bonaire.